Welcome back to another S15 Resto Mod video. Here we're going to look at installing the S15 fog lights in the ADM S15 or 200SX, where I found not much detailed information online. To keep things as factory as possible, I've sourced one of these indicator stalks with a fog light switch. Now, you would have seen other videos where the car already has these plugs in the bumper area, but the 200SX or Australian delivered S15s don't have the wiring already installed. So you need to install all of this yourself. First is wiring up the fog light switch, which I'm using the OEM Nissan one. Now the JDM cars should already have the plug, the 2-pin plug for this switch to plug into, but I got this connector from J-Car and I just spliced it in really simply. And here I'm just testing to make sure that the connection works and that when switching to on, we've got some continuity. So I'm happy with the quick test, and this is just showing you where I've run the two wires from the fuse box and into the wheel well. There's a grommet there, and then that leads into the cabin. And from the driver's side footwell, you can pull the wiring and then lead it up towards the steering column. Next step is to replace the original indicator stalk, which doesn't have the fog light switches, with the fog light switch version. So this is really easy. As you can see, it's just a couple of screws and a couple of plugs. The next hiccup comes when actually trying to fit the fog light switch version. There's an extra little section on it that makes it really impossible to push on like the non-fog light switch unit. Pushes on and off quite easily, and you'll see what I need to do in terms of cutting so that it's got the same sort of installation. So at this point, the original unit would just push in, but you can see that something's blocking the way, and you can clearly see here at the bottom of the unit there's this extra plug section that kind of sticks out. So I've ground that off in order to give it some clearance, and then I am able to push it on. You can see now it just slips right over the ignition barrel and the IMO unit, and the two screws are now able to be fitted. Now we can move on to fuse box wiring. So just checking out what I need to do for the wiring for the fog lights. You can see that there's already a fuse allocation there for the 15 amp fuse right at the bottom, front fog. And there is a fuse there already in mine, but I don't think it's wired up. But I will need that fuse anyway. Let's just check. Oh, it's tight. Yeah, no, there's no pin in there. But I'll need that location anyway, which is good. I've got the fuse now, which is great. And then to connect it, I'll also need a relay. Now in my engine bay, that relay space has already been taken up, so I'll relocate that after I've identified what it is. And then I've got this relay here, which I've labeled. So basically, what needs to happen is the switch wiring goes to the smaller two wires there. That's the trigger. And that'll join onto the switch wiring that I've fed through the wheel arch, and that goes to the fog light switch, the one that I've replaced with the new switch from EFI Solutions. And then a pair of these thicker ones goes to that fuse, so here, and then this white and green, they'll go to one fog light each, and then at the fog light, then that gets grounded to the chassis. Now we know how the relay is wired up. This is just showing you how I've moved that top blue relay into its new position to make space for the brown relay. Now, so that the fog lights are fused, I've made this loop in the wiring, and the long leg of this wire ends up going to the fuse 15 amp. Here I'm just feeding all the wire ends through to where that new relay is going to live. So it's the switches wiring and the fog light wiring, the power wires that are being pulled through, which you can see the black and then the secure and covered up with some heat shrink. Last thing to install is that final long leg of the wire, which is the other end of the 15 amp fuse. So you can see that that's where the other leg would kind of sit in. Firstly, you need to unlock where all of the ends of these fuse plugs would go into. And you can see that long white piece there. This is the locking piece. And so without unlocking that, you won't be able to insert this last leg in to then give your fog lights a fused power. So you want to pull that out with a screwdriver. As you can see here, I've removed that white panel, and then you're able to push that pin in so that you've got a fused 15 amp fog light setup. So you push that pin in from underneath, and I apologize here because my head ends up covering what I did, but you'll feel it click in, and once that's in, you replace that white clip to lock everything into place, and then you're able to replace that 15 amp fuse. So with the relay and fuse in place, I'm just testing to see if I get 12 volts at the other end of the power wires, which will power up the fog lights. So all of the engine bay wiring is done. So this is the new relay as per the relay box sticker. And then the power goes down here, and then you'll see that red and yellow and red wire, the thick gauge there, comes out. First one to the driver's side fog light, and you can see I've already run the ground wires as well, which grounds just here, which is a common ground for something, but that's where I've joined it to. And then, of course, the wiring runs across to the passenger side, and there's the common ground here that I have used from a different car, but that comes in really handy. Those fans, I have no idea what they're for, they're not even wired up, but that's a mystery for another time. And then on the passenger side, just got the wires ready there. So with the wiring all done, it's time to move to the instrument cluster. So we're almost done with the fog light install for the S15. This is specific for the Australian domestic model variant, because there is no pre-wiring done in the engine bay, and there's no pre-wiring done in the interior as well. Now, the last thing that I want to do is to get the symbol for the fog lights being turned on wired up, and you have to take the instrument cluster out. Really easy to take that out. And then there's some, I'm guessing that there's going to be some pins on one of the back plugs here to wire into, so we can get the fog light little symbol working on the cluster. And I'm pretty sure it's the one on the bottom here on this side. There are some empty spaces here for some globe housings. So I'm going to get a brown one and put it in here from a spare instrument cluster from around the same generation. And that should get that globe warning light, or when I turn that switch on, it'll have a warning symbol here on the instrument cluster to tell you that the fog light is on. So you definitely want that, just in case you leave them on, you know that there's going to be the light here to tell you that it's still on, so that when you get out, you can turn it off and you won't have a flat battery. Now, to show you that I know that there is a fog light warning symbol in the instrument cluster, I'm just going to shine this light in the back here where those spare holes are, and hopefully this works. And you can see where that light will be once it's all wired up and working properly. So, light on. And there's also the high cas that you can get wired up. But yeah, it's one of those ones here. And then I'll just shine it on the other side to show you that there's nothing really on the other side to show. But there are spare globe holes there as well. They must have done that for some other reason. But yeah, there's the fog light one. I think one of those. Bottom one, I'm pretty sure it is. Cool. So how do you wire it up? How do you figure out what goes where and how to wire this up? Gonna need some test leads.
So back in the car now, and I've got the instrument cluster here, which I have marked those pins on the back
But the plug that we want to focus in on is going to be the right hand side most brown plug, and I'm going to mark out where the pins are for the plug on this side. And okay, it's a little bit difficult, but you can see hopefully the two pins there that I've marked. So it's the top left, second one down, and then the bottom right, it's the fifth one up. I'm not sure what the number of these pins are going to be, but I'll just quickly pause the video and transfer those marks onto the brown plug, the right hand side most brown plug, and then show you where those locations are. Awesome. So it just so happens that the cluster can kind of just sit up there, and I'll show you what I've done. So the wiring loom for the instrument cluster is quite long, and you can pull it out. And you can see that there are my two marks there. So top left and fifth one up from the bottom right. And plugging that in there, I'm able to sort of gauge where on the plug that second to top pin is, and I've just marked it in the blue there. So I'll need to add a pin in that location. And on the other side, let me just plug that back in quickly. Hopefully the cluster does not fall. Pop that back in. On the other side, you can see that I've already put the mark where the fifth one is, and already there is a wire there, and it's black, and as we know, black in Nissans is always going to be the ground. So I'm going to want to hook into that black wire. I'll just splice into it actually I don't need to do anything now. I just need to add the signal because that's already there. You can see that lines up to my blue mark in there on that pin. So that's already done that side. I just need to add the signal for the light. And so that signal is going to come from one of the wires from the new fog light stalk here. So this one here, you'll remember that I do have a spare wire hanging out of the engine bay, and that wire can be the signal to here, and then that should complete everything. And then I'll give it a little bit of a test by adding a bulb into this location there, which is marked as lamp 26. Now, a really small but important detail here is you want to know how to unlock the plugs here so that you can insert those new pins or a new pin. And there are these white locking tabs here, which you can lift up from its original location first. And I've already lifted this one up and out of the way, but when I push it, hold on, it's kind of pushed itself back in. When I push it back down, you'll hear it click. So you hear that click. You can see that side is now down versus the bottom, which is a little bit, it's kind of sticking out a little bit. So that's now locked all the way in. But you can see the other side, I have pulled it out, and that's the side where I want to add the extra wire from the fog light stalk, and you can pull that out. So you unclick it first, and then you sort of pull it out even more, and then that can be removed. Next step is to extract a pin from a different instrument cluster, and luckily these are quite common. I actually found out because I'm used to the Audi VW stuff. They're the same pins, which is awesome. So I'm just going to grab one of those from one of the looms that I've got, and then I'll have a fog light warning light in the instrument cluster working as well. So I've just extracted one of the pins from the Nissan wiring harness, and you can see that's the kind of pin that's in there. And literally they just, I'm going to try to do this with one hand, just plugs in and pushes into its location once that white clip has been removed. So that just lives there. And for the other one where that blue mark is, this is the one I've extracted from a spare harness that I've got. That will just live in there, and that should do the trick. So you can see I've inserted that yellow wire, that's my new fog light signal lamp wire, into position, top left, second one down, and I just want to make sure that it's working and connected. So I've got that end hooked up to the multimeter, and I'm just going to poke around here. I'm at 26, either contact, and it should buzz if it's working. There we go, perfect. Cool. So that's all good, making contact. So I'll be able to wire this up now to one of the wires connected to the fog light. Oh, if I can get it to focus, this here. And that should mean I'll have a fog light warning symbol on the dash as well. So I've grabbed a spare bulb holder from an N13 Triple S Pulsar instrument cluster there. It's a different kind of bulb holder, slightly different to the rest, but it can be made to fit. That's all I've got laying around, so I'm going to use that, and fingers crossed it all tests out okay. Now, to get the signal from the fog lights, you want to have the other end of that wire from the second pin down from the top left of the brown plug come back into the engine bay, and it needs to connect to either one of the fog light positives. So that bulb in the instrument cluster will turn on when the fog lights turn on, and I've just hooked up back into the relay wiring there, so it looks nice and neat. So with everything wired up and buttoned back up quite nicely, it's time to test the fog lights. So here I've got the new stalk installed. So that's off position, on for the fog light. And with the warning light as well, or the indicator light, that's now working, which is really nice. Everything else works as it should. Headlights on, high beams on, fog light off. Yeah, everything's good. I got these plugs from AliExpress, funnily enough. That's where I could easily find them, and they were really cheap. You have to get them in packets of 5. Obviously I just need 2, but they are great because they have the weather sealing plugs on the back, and I'll be able to plug them right into the fog light plug. So what I'll do is I'll just remove my jerry-rigged made up ones, and you can see that they're the perfect shape. There we go. So I just have to wire this all up, and I'm going to neaten it all up now to make sure it looks really nice in there. With the loom all wrapped up in engine bay tester tape, I'm just going to plug these back in and reinstall the fog lights with their screws and their fog light trims. Now, to help secure the fog light trim, I've got these little like securing clips, I guess, and they work really well just to slip on, and then I'll be able to use like some kind of screw or something to be able to attach the fog light trim on. So with that little bit on there, fog light trim can go on, and then I'll be able to put a screw in that hole. Great, and then same thing on the left. I'm using Torx screws here just to make sure no one
can get them.
So that's everything you need to know to wire up your fog lights in your ADM Nissan S15 Silvia. Now there is a little bit to it, like laying down fresh wires. You want to make sure that relay is working properly, installation of the fog light switch itself, which I've used the stock Nissan Silvia integrated fog light switch that's integrated into the headlamp switch as well. You want to wire up that fog light indicator lamp in the instrument cluster, and of course wiring up the fog lights themselves. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please remember to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell for more Nissan Silvia S15 content upcoming. In the meantime, I'm Ian and thanks for watching. Bye.